Welcome to writingalong.com. Today's episode is all about how slang is okay in your writing. In fact, it's actually encouraged. I would really recommend you utilize it if it's, a way you already talk. If there's a certain word that you use, linguistically, you would be inclined to utilize it in your writing. You don't want to neglect who you are in terms of the way that you talk on the page. Otherwise, you might actually be doing the world a disservice if you kind of self-censor yourself. For what? Because you think you have to have this Oxford accent with the most eloquent diction ever witnessed by the modern, that kind of like. You don't have to talk like that. You don't have to write like that. It's not really necessary. And if we're talking significance, I think keeping alive a way that you talk, the way that the people you know talk, is more significant than imitating and basically being a living parrot of the way others write, because they say you have to write and talk like that too. I think being your own self through the way you talk and write is much more valuable than being a parrot. It just is. Because otherwise, people will not know. Like, if you're, as a writer, are providing some kind of contribution already to the species. Not like directly, like, oh, look at me, I'm such a contributor to humanity. No, I mean, you're creating history as you make it. It's something that people can look back on in a time, in a context, in a place, and be like, oh, this is how this person was talking. This is how they were talking. And that says something. That means something. That's a preservation of existence, of human life, that you will be, in a sense, I'll say you'll be rewarded in your life for it, because otherwise, no one else is going to do that. Especially right now, I can't reach everybody, but a lot of people think that they have to change the way they talk. They have to change the way that they really communicate in general when they write suddenly. Like, they have to be so different. It's just not really necessary. If that voice inside you thinks of that word, if it uses words in this way, use them on the page too. I'm telling you, linguistically, and I don't mean that in a complicated way, I just mean the study of linguistics, the study of language science and all that stuff. It's significant in the sense artistically, but it's significant academically, it's significant intellectually. Just by what? By writing a long thesis paper? No, just by writing what you feel and how you feel you want to write it. And producing that into some kind of written work, a short story, a poem, a novel, a book collection, just your life's work. Maybe it's just something that's like that. The thing is, you're also you're creating a preservation for your own self as well. As you write other things down the line, you're actually going to see a progression of your own thoughts and the way you spoke. And the way you speak is actually going to tell of your own life, not just directly. Because when you write, you're not always saying, this is how I feel right now, and this is how I feel right now. You could, but that's not all your writing is. Usually you're talking about events that are occurring. And because of that, a lot of things aren't directly stated. And if you want to tap into what's really being felt, you have to listen a little closer, listen to the words. Read between the lines, they say. But if you use slang, I mean, it helps. It's a marker. It's something that tells. It's something new too. That's the thing. Why is it called slang? Because it's different from the standard, and these little differentiation is a deviation from what is normal. What is normal is what is in the center, right? What is normal doesn't mean what's right, and because of that, you have these things that are far from it, close to it, far from it. And those are significant. Those are important. I think I like to hear about those things. Like, I like to hear about what's not like everything else. Most people do too. They're looking for that. They're seeking that out, because through that comes some kind of transformation, comes some kind of change, comes a widening of your worldview, of your perspective. And people are always looking for some kind of change themselves. They won't say, I want my worldview changed. I want to change the way I see everything. Some people will. That's a wonderful, beautiful place to be. It's a very vulnerable place to be, but it's a wonderful place to be, just in terms of the wonder you can experience in the world. not everyone's going to say that, but a lot of people are going to feel that. And through that, expose your audience, challenge them, and talk the way that you do. Abbreviate words that other people would look at like, what, how does that work? Now this is an extreme example, but I've seen the word thirst abbreviated, the number 3 and then ST. I don't know how that works, but it does, right? If someone included in that book, in their book, I would never forget it. Especially if they just used it authentically, because that's the way they typed or something. I'm not saying I'd like to see that in the book like the whole entire time, but if they did, I wouldn't care. It's not an example of slang. It's more just like, like I said, a literal abbreviation. But that kind of effect is what you have. If you say ain't, use ain'ts in your book. All right, that's the most common piece of slang. That's probably what you've been thinking about in your head this entire time. If not, there's all kinds of other words, that would come to mind that someone else might be thinking, like, what the hell are they talking about? But you'll be challenging your audience, and also you'll be heard by the people who already know what it means, and you'll connect with them at a deeper level, more personal level. And that's something that is just rewarding. It's something that's important. It's something you want to do as a writer, because as a writer, you want to be accessible. You want to be understood. And sometimes you're not understood right off the bat, but if it's just a word or two here and there, then someone who's not familiar with the way you talk is going to be interested. Like, wait a minute, that's pretty, wow, using a word like that? What? Why have I been using it in such a constrained way? What standards am I adhering to? A lot of the stuff it's higher level, not like, oh, it's so intellectual and so higher up, people can't even comprehend or understand this stuff. It's not like that higher up. It's more just one of those like a higher level process that isn't necessarily being consciously thought of. People aren't sitting around thinking, my linguistic capabilities are being challenged right now, and my brain processing is heightening in its experiential differentiation, observation, in the linearity of my language understanding as I'm talking and saying words to you that you increasingly understand, because I'm speaking the language that you do right now, which is, simplicity. There are certain words, there's a certain way of talking that is pretty much universally understood, because it's not so estranged from the center. The thing is, when you use a certain way of talking that is unique to you, unless it's a whole dialect, then that's something else. Go ahead and write in your dialect if you'd like, because then you're writing for people who speak it. But if it's just a word or two, slang is just a couple words here and there, a couple different deviations. People understand the core of what you're saying, but they're gonna see these like fireworks that go off in this way, and it's interesting to watch. It has an effect, and that's like definitely a tell of your uniqueness as a writer. As a speaker, if you're talking to someone and there's certain mannerisms, certain habits that you have, in general, you're understood. In general, you talk in a very normal way. But the little tiny bits and pieces, these little bouts and lapses that your brain will fall into in terms of the way that you're talking, that stuff stands out. That's how people remember you. You're not just some insane person just yelling and shouting. Maybe you are, but I don't think you are. And no one knows what the hell you're saying, but you talk. You're quiet, maybe you're not. And there's something that's unique to you. Maybe you wonder sometimes, like, why do I talk like that? Why do I say that? Why do I act like that? But that's what is you. That's what's known. That's what gets remembered. And that's what that voice inside you is uniquely attuned to. That's the way that it wants to produce words. Stay true to it. Don't kill it. Don't strangle it. Don't suffocate it. Don't think you need to murder it in order to talk in a specific way, because you don't. If anything, the impact is more powerful when you retain what was already yours. It's a form of, I don't want to say resistance, because that word has just been, especially when I'm recording this video, it doesn't really mean as much anymore. But it kind of is, if I wanted to use that word as powerfully as it can be used. It's just an act of defiance almost, because you're almost expected to filter yourself and just kind of dilute your message, dilute your meaning. And if you don't do that, that stands out. That means something. That's something that people admire. That's something that people right out will praise. You're not aware of why they're doing it or why they like it, but I'm telling you, you don't censor your slang. Write like it. Slang could be just the way you write, like the way you say words. Find a way to communicate that through the writing. You're creative, you'll think of a way. But don't be afraid of it, despite what you've been told. Don't use those words. Stop putting apostrophes there, or don't stop saying that because that's not the proper way to talk. No, it is a way to talk because people understand you. Most likely, the person who even told you that understands what you were trying to say. Be experimental about it. Don't be a jerk about it. Don't try to make your message all obscured for no reason, but speak the way you do and do it authentically, because authentic writing is much more powerful than any stilted, filtered, what I call useless writing. Check out How to Write a Book in 30 Days on my website, writingalong.com. Very useful, practical guide that will give you pretty much everything you need to get started. You have no idea where to begin with writing a book. It's really the guide I wish I had found when I started writing. And like I said, slang is okay. If anything, it's actually encouraged. Embrace it in your writing. I'll see you around, and thanks for tuning in.